Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with Marco Previero from R3 Location in London town. What's up, Marco? How's it going?
I'm very well, Ben. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to our conversation over the next 60 minutes or so.
I am excited. We're going to be talking about DSP stuff. We're going to be talking about London. We're going to test some of my American ignorance about other places. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, we get the audience involved a little bit too. If you're checking in right now, hit that like button. Let us know who you are, where you are. We're on our Love and Reload channel right now as well. Super fun. Got Adrian Grimes checking in. Always support and appreciate you, Adrian, live from Global HQ in Dallas. What's up? Andy Meadowcroft. Look at this.
Hi, Andy.
Love Andy. Andy's also a super bright chap over there. The Dream. I can't even say that.
The dream team, the
Okay,
dream team.
we're not doing the three on that one. Okay, the dream team. Looking forward to listening. Andy and I had the most amazing conversation when he was on about the metaverse. And I feel like the most impactful application for the, I guess, augmented reality, virtual reality, I feel like it might be in the DSP world. I'm really interested. What do you think about that, Marco?
So I think two things, Ben. I think if you're going to have a conversation about the metaverse, I think Andy Meadowcroft is the right person to have it with.
You're trying to get out of this conversation already, Marco. You're trying to say, listen, you need to call Andy
he's
up.
the right kind of guy. You know, he's got great ideas about the relocation. He thinks differently about it, and it's nice that I'm able to engage with him on a regular basis on that front. It's an interesting question. Those goggles. I think technology can be helpful in the context of destination services provision. I don't think it can substitute physically walking around a property. When we move people into London or the rest of the UK, property has that very tangible quality to it that you just can't replicate through virtual reality goggles. And people need to walk the space and feel the space and breathe the space, look around, look at the neighborhood. And I don't think you can really substitute the physical experience of being there.
Right.
I think there could be an amazing enabler to provide perhaps an opportunity to shortlist perhaps and make the service more efficient and more effective and possibly slightly quicker, but they can never substitute the final walkthrough that people have.
I'm going to ask people who are joining us right now the same question, audience participation. Would you use a kind of a metaverse Oculus? Now, Apple just came out with their version. Would you use that, on a property tour? Would you use that on a neighborhood kind of look-see kind of trip? Would it do the trick for you? Would you need more information? I want to know, what do people think that are watching this right now? I want you to weigh in. What do you think about it? I'm really curious. Drew Phillips. Drew's from the Bay. They're very technologically savvy. He says, London town, mind the gap. That's a good piece of advice. Did a DSP teach you that, Drew? Where's the mind the gap come from?
Comes from the tube. So every time you get on the tube, on the bus, every time you got on the tube in London, there's this tannoy voice that comes whenever the doors open, and it tells you to mind the gap. There is a gap between where the tube stops on the platform and the edge of the platform. But so far, so I've spent the best part.
That gap get a lot of people? That gap gets a lot of people, huh?
No, it doesn't. So I was going to say, so far, I mean, I've spent the best part of 25 years of my working, or 30 years of my working life in London, and I haven't seen anybody fall through the
Can
cracks.
somebody who's watching this right now research this real quick? Why does it tell us? Was there a massive gap accident back in the day? Was a gap getting after people like before they were just making straight sweaters? And tell us about where the mind the gap came from. Who decided that had to be posted? Was it Churchill? I want to know where that came from. Danny Herskowitz is saying, hey, Ben and Marco, I'm excited about this conversation. Watching from New Jersey. What's up, Herskowitz?
Wow.
We got Jersey in the house. We got Sherry Venezia. Is it? Did I say it right? I don't know.
Venezia.
Shari Venezia.
It's a wonderful surname.
Yeah,
I'd love to have that surname. Yeah.
It's a nice one. Hi from San Francisco. Look at this. We got Jana Shazanaski in the house. Happy Wednesday from Brazil.
I met Jana in an Irish pub in Dublin. We were drinking whiskey together.
Oh, nice. A little Irish. Was it like Jameson or what? Do you remember what kind of what brand it was?
No, I can't remember. I don't particularly like whiskey, and I just had a couple in Dublin during the recent Euro, and and one of them I happened to be sharing it as part of a conversation with Jana. It was the first time I met her. Wonderful lady.
Jana knows how to meet people in a pub. That is Jana's superpower. She knows how to meet people in a pub for sure. Half of Dublin met Jana that night, I'm sure. Adam Sotelo checking in from behind the camera. What's up, super producer Adam in the house? Look at Jana. Thank you. We needed a Brazilian to help us out here. Do we have any Londoners here that's going to give us any information? Jana says in Brazil, we mind the gap as well. But people here fall.
There you go.
I love it. Jana says she's doing whatever she can to stimulate the economy locally there in Ireland by drinking the whiskey. That's awesome here. Ben Sukia, hello. Ben's a Londoner. Ben, do you mind the gap? Ben Sukia says, hello, folks. Looking for the chat. When are you and Queen Jana going to grace us in London with your presence, Benji? Well, I came for the Queen's birthday recently, and that didn't work out very well. So I don't know, Ben, if you want me back. I think you're running out of royalty. So I better, I don't know, Ben, probably next year, Ben, I'm thinking. Unless maybe Sukia sponsors it. I don't know. Is there something coming up I should come over for, Marco? Before we get into more personal matters?
In London, I don't think so. I think there's something coming up in Paris, in Europe, in 2024, the Olympics. So that'd be something worth going to.
I've been confused for an Olympian before. That's nice. King Ben. Yes. Was that a King Ben? Yeah. King Ben the first. Are you King Ben the first? I think he's the second. What do we think? Can we vote on that? Ben Sukia, King Ben the second. Ben, it's good to hear from you, Sukia. Let's see here. We got hello from a smoke-filled New Jersey. Oh, what are y'all smoking out in Jersey? It's legal out there. Sherry, Marco, got it. Yes, this is great. IBA in London, December 2024. I had a lot of those immigration folks last year, Ben. I don't know. It's supposed to be a biennial, and now it's every year, apparently. Drew saying the gap is real, ladies and gentlemen. As for the meta and DSPs, I think it's a good support piece, but I need to touch it, feel it, smell it all in person.
I agree.
Missy Elliott song. Yeah. So tell us tell us your approach there, Marco. Tell us about what you get when you get DSP services. All my years of doing Love and Relo, I've never actually been a customer of a DSP. So what do you get? Walk us through the benefit a little bit.
Of course. So when employees come into London, into the local city, they have a benefit package from their employers that spans the whole range of relocation services as we understand them. So they would get household goods and visa and immigration, coordination services. And one of the benefits that they receive from their employers is support on the ground to find the right property for them and for their families. And we are essentially that support. And so we engage and support families that are moving predominantly into London, but we do cover the whole of the UK as well. And we help them with the real estate transaction, essentially. We are there to guide them and make them understand the rental market so that they can make a better choice for themselves to suit the criteria that they have when they come on location for 1, 2, 3 years. And we are there to represent their best interest, essentially. We are there to be on their side, to make sure that they get to see the best possible properties that are available against the criteria that they have, as individuals and as families, and that we secure for them the right kind of tenancy, the right kind of rental for their stay in London. So we are essentially their guide, but also we're there to represent their best interests in what is in London a very complex and fast-moving market.
So, all right. So here I am over here in the States, right? And I fancy myself a savvy statesman. And I'm moving over to London. And I reach out to R3 Location. I say, hey, I'm coming. What is the most important service you think that I'm going to need? You know, what's that number one thing that you need to say, Ben, we need to set this up for you and we need to do this for you right away?
Sure. So I think the most important element is to make sure that you feel supported and that you feel that we are there for you for the next 2 to 3 months to represent your best interests.
What gives people that feeling most, you think, Marco?
I think that the speed at which we get to you in the first place. So we would typically be initiated by the corporate clients or by your employer, Ben. And we would say, hey, you know, Ben needs to move in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Can you please reach out to Ben and make sure that he's supported in the right way? So we would connect with you. We would set up a call and we would begin the conversation by trying to understand the needs that you have as an individual, your timeline, what you're seeking to achieve in the context of the move that you have, and to really make you feel that we are there to, we are expert first and foremost. So we need to put that across in a very clear and visible way, that we understand the market and that we are there to support the needs that you have as an individual, whether it's you or you and your family, when you are moving to London. So we're providing reassurance that we understand the process and the steps required to get you from where you are at the moment in the US to a secure house in London over the next 30 to 60 days.
So you take kind of a consultative approach, it sounds like, with me, and start asking me what I'm trying to accomplish, what my objectives are, maybe what my fears are. And are you talking to like my spouse or partner as well in that process, or do you kind of work with the employee foremost? Like, you know, we set up this call. Is it like kind of a Zoom call and I'm like, honey, get over here, we got to talk to Marco? Or is it like, don't worry, I'll tell her all about it? You know, how does it work best?
Well, it's a great question, Ben. And the answer is it depends how you guys want to play it. So very often, for example, we would actually engage more often with a partner because they tend to have more time. A lot of the time they might make the decision around the property. They may well have specific requirements that we need to establish early on. But generally, we want to work with whoever it makes sense in the context of your own individual circumstances, and that can be very, very different according to your different makeup and your different dynamics as a family.
What about my kids? So how far down do we go, right? Because it's so interesting to me as I look at who the stakeholders are in a family's relocation. And it seems to me that we value the opinions of the kids more than we ever have in these family decisions. I asked my wife if she wants to go to the little footy game tonight, right? I said, oh, you want to get 4 tickets to the FC Dallas match tonight? And she said, well, I can't tell you what the kids are going to feel like doing at that time of night. I said, well, I didn't ask the kids. I asked you if you want to go to the footy match. But apparently the kids get to make that. They're 8 and 5. They're 8 and 5. What happened to just telling them where they're going to go and strapping them in for the ride, you know? So, I mean, how much do you get involved with the needs and wants of the kids? I mean,
as much or as little as the family would like us to get involved. I mean, ultimately, we take direction from you, Ben, and from you and your spouse as to how much engagement your children might need to have or how much input they might need to have. Certainly, we've taken families around with their children to look at properties. Certainly for second and third viewings, depending on the children's age, they might be involved in the decision making. So as you mentioned earlier on, the consultative approach is often the better one because because it's a decision that's going to impact the whole family. And if you can get buy-in through the process of learning about the market and having visibility of the properties that are available, then all the better. So children are often part of the process, and we don't often take them around on tour depending on their age, because they tend to be very long days, but certainly they are often involved.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just we talk about the spouses a lot, we talk about the partners a lot, and making sure that they're cared for, and as you correctly pointed out, they're driving a lot of these decisions, and yet the kids just seem to be one of those aspects that I don't know how much we're caring for them. I don't know how much we should care for them. Andrew Metacroft said you're going to need a partner who's going to tell you they're going to remove the distractions of relocation, which is R3's true magic. Oh, that's cool.
Oh, thank you.
How does that
you,
feel
Andy.
to hear from a client partner?
It's wonderful, wonderful thing to hear, and that's what we try and do every day. Essentially, we try and remove the noise for our clients ultimately. So the HR function or the relocation management company, we're there to essentially to be a buffer and a true partner in that sense. But we're also there to really engage fully with the families that are coming over, because we're a service industry. We need to provide good customer service.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Speaking of the customer and speaking of the client partners and the RMCs, what do clients need to consider when they're choosing between DSP providers?
I think, it's an interesting question, really. I think they need to consider, first of all, their own makeup. What is it that they're looking to, what need are they looking to address? And they need to look at the market and try and understand which players within that market would best address those particular needs. It must be a very, very difficult decision to make if you are a client, because certainly in the UK, which is a market I understand, it is a saturated market as far as the provision of relocation services is concerned. And because it's a saturated market, and because there is there are low barriers to entry to become a local destination service provider, it does tend to be quite a confusing marketplace as well. And so it is often very difficult for clients to try and filter out all the various destination service providers that are present in that particular local marketplace, and select the ones that really best suit their needs. And we're there as much as we can to try, in the longer term, to try and educate those clients and potential clients as to why R3 location actually might be the right solution for them.
You talk about the challenge in discerning between the relocation service providers, in London, and I've heard some people say that certain service provider verticals are saturated here in the States and in other markets as well, and there's a lot of sameness, and it's hard to differentiate between them all and everything. And sometimes these large enterprise clients, like an RMC or like a multinational client, just say, you know what, I just want to source a global partner, one hand to shake, worldwide. I don't got to deal with it, whatever. Is that the right move?
And the answer is it depends on your internal capabilities. It depends on what you're trying to achieve as a corporate client. It depends on the philosophy of the policy that you're trying to implement, the degree of uniformity of that policy worldwide. It's a complex question, and certainly in the market as I've seen it over the last 15-20 years since I've started my life within the relocation industry, I have seen clients adopt all sorts of different models, from the truly outsourced model that you've just talked about, Ben, to a more regional model where they might have different relocation management companies or different hubs in different region, to a much more local model where the client engages directly with local providers like us Relocation to deliver services. And I haven't really seen any discernible patterns. It has to be said, over the last 15 years, I think there has been some ebbs and flow to those models, and they haven't changed significantly in terms of makeup or frequency. I don't know that there is a right answer to that. I think really depends on what as a corporate client, what you're looking to achieve. Are you looking to streamline the process? Are you looking to provide uniformity of service? Are you looking to lower your costs? Are you looking to increase the level of service in certain region and lower it in others? It's a complex world out there, and I don't know that there's an easy answer to that. But what's interesting is you mentioned the sort of the fact that my perception of the saturation actually is reflected in the US marketplace. As it must be interesting sitting where you are, because you talk to a lot of people from different background and different services to an extent within the same industry. How do you see the world of relocation as an observer? How do you make sense of it?
I'm so glad you asked, honestly. Now I get to talk to all these people, but I don't often get to share what I find. I think that when you're talking about managing like a global program, like let's say like an RMC, and Andy's got an even better question coming up for us next. But real quick, just to handle some business here, I think that when you look at the amount of countries that you service as, say, a relocation management company, or even a large multinational company, it's very hard to source providers across all verticals, across all countries where you have any volume, right? Because let's remember, right? We have to be able to. I mean, if we go into a country once or twice a year, we have to be able to have a mover there. We have to be able to have a DSP there. We have to be able. So I think that an immigration partner. So I think the complexity and the all the combinations and stuff there, mean that you sometimes have to rely on these kind of global providers to do some of that sourcing for you. Accordingly, it's also easier to sell that because you have one set of procedures, you have one set of pricing, you have kind of a standardized McDonald's approach, right? To say, okay, I know what a hamburger is going to taste like in every market, right? And that's easy to sell. Now, you pay a premium because now you're paying a middleman to service that business and source it for you, right? So you have to make a business decision. Is the trade-off of ease worth the margin you're giving up? You also lose the relationships and the control over the sauce, if you will, to continue using the food analogy in that market, right? And so if you know that you have a guy like a Marco Previero who's just got some magic to him, like Andy seemed to indicate here, it would be a shame to lose that magic, right? Because you have to make sauce for every country, so it'd be a shame to lose that magic and some of that local flavor, right? So you might say, well, the provider I use is going to source through a Marco Previero, but what if they don't, right? And what if price pressures dictate that they go to the lowest cost provider and they use kind of an out of work real estate agent, or they use kind of maybe a parent whose kids just went into school and don't really have a little extra time on their hands, but they're not like a formally trained relocation professional, right? So I think these are all the trade-offs that happen, and I think we blame price quite a bit and price pressure for a lot of the compromises that we make as service providers, but I don't think that we recognize the opportunity to go up market and provide a significantly qualitatively better service and actually differentiate ourselves more than we do by price cutting.
And I think that's the only way to look at it, Ben. I think I think you've got that in one. It's about being able to demonstrate that the difference is going to provide value over and above that standardized approach. And it doesn't preclude, incidentally, and you're right. I mean, we're competing all the time against the one-man band that is providing a, perhaps a cheaper service to the one that we are providing. But the key question is, how can we demonstrate to the ultimate client that using our 3-location makes sense locally over and above that particular individual? Because we can't possibly, as an organization, spend time. Of course, it's important to understand the competition, but ultimately we need to be focused on what we're doing as an organization, right, and making sure that we're doing the right thing to address the needs of the clients that we have. And we have to try our best. And if it doesn't work, well, then so be it, ultimately. But I think that's the focus. That's the focus for us, as it were. And it doesn't preclude the possibility of those clients saying to the big RMCs out there, well, in London, for example, as it's happened a few times in London, I want you guys to use our 3-location because we know that they can do a good job. We know that they're the right fit against the policy that we're trying to implement, and we're not the right fit against all of those policies, and that's that's a trade-off as well for us, and that's okay.
Well, and I think we all dream of those directed relationships, and it's every RMC's nightmare because they build a service delivery mechanism that says we're going to have standardizations of processes and suppliers, right? Mm-hmm. And then 40% of their business is directed, right? And it's like enough that, I mean, if 20, 30, 40, 50% of your business is directed to certain providers, I mean, it almost makes it even harder than saying everything's bespoke, because now you're trying to pretend it's a standardized process, but in fact your exceptions occupy 30-40%.
That's true, and I think it's true if you're selling your USP as that. But I think if you're a relocation management company and you're saying, well, we're going to provide you with the right solution in each of those individual countries so that you receive the best possible service, whether your employee is moving to Madrid or to London or to Milan, then I think that's a different question altogether. And then I think that the introduction that they get from clients actually can be helpful to them as well.
And I agree with that, right? Because the suppliers are kind of their tentacles into the market, right?
Right.
And a proper and an ideal relationship between a relocation management company and a relocation supplier, if it's a true partnership, they're leveraging those relationships, and you're saying, this is my favorite partner to partner with, and I would, if you're going to outsource your program, these are the people I would trust to do it. Right. I mean, that is key. And furthermore, I think relocation management companies really miss the boat when making their presentations to their client by not highlighting and spotlighting their providers in each market and telling their stories about how they're so good at what they do. Right. Because they're almost because RMCs are almost commoditizing themselves by hiding their supply chain behind this kind of curtain of process, and say, don't worry, we're going to take care of it all. It's almost like you need to kind of give people a glimpse behind the curtain, show them the crazy amount of work that goes into it and all the institutional knowledge that's back there, and then hide it again and say, but don't worry about it, we got it.
So, I think two things on that. First of all, and he's not going to mind me saying it because we won the best partnership of the year at the EMAs a couple of years ago. But
congratulations.
But Andy is a client, and if we look at Ayres, for example, and I'm going to get in trouble with other RMCs, but Ayres, I think, probably in the market at the moment understands the benefit of leveraging local relationships between the corporate clients that they have and the local providers on location. And I think they do that better than anybody else. And I think it stands them in really good stead to really be able to elevate their service, which is a word that Andy likes very much, in the context of the long term, so as to be different from what's currently out there. And the second point I was going to make, because I'm 51 years of age, I've actually forgotten. But it'll come back to me.
Well, don't worry. Let's elevate this conversation for a second, and let's go to Andy Metacroft here, who's kind of our guest here on the show. Andy always knows how to get to my heart. Andy does. Okay. Dazzle me with the metaverse and feed me Guinness and I basically placated at that point. Andy says, does Guinness taste the same globally, or does it taste better in Dublin? Source those local specialists to get the best experience, or accept you'll get variance in the end product. Well, I'm going to ask this question since you went to Dublin recently. Did you have a Guinness in Dublin, Marco?
I'm ashamed to say that I
Oh
didn't.
my gosh.
And that I don't particularly like Guinness, but I would make a different type of analogy, and I'm going to use red wine.
Okay.
I think a lot of it can be subjective to the location. So you could turn that question around and say, does Guinness taste better because subjectively being in Dublin feels like the better place to be to drink your Guinness than out of a can at home? In other words, does the subjectivity of your environment actually changes your perception of the quality of the product that you're drinking at the moment? And we can draw the same analogy to tie in with the metaverse and looking at properties. Do you get the same perception of what a property is going to be like by walking around it physically on location, rather than looking at it through virtual reality goggles? I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to that.
What's interesting about red wine is it's very important where it's grown and produced.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it's important where it's drunk, where it's drunk. Am I drunk? Am I drank?
I think. I mean, I don't want to get all romantic on you, Ben, but I think
let's get romantic. It's late.
There is a difference between sipping a glass of red wine overlooking the sunset across the Atlantic Ocean than there would be just drinking a glass of red wine on your own at home watching EastEnders on television. That's a very UK centric reference. That's a television show that's been running forever.
We would drink a glass of red wine and watch Ted Lasso over here, probably.
Wow, but it's interesting. You said we.
We would, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My spouse, who makes all the decisions, right, and I would sit there and watch Ted Lasso over red wine.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Let's see here. Doris, oh, this is great. We got people chiming in here. Hit that like button. Get in the comments. What do you think? Yeah. Where are you drinking your red wine? What are you talking about? And why do you like it so much? I want to know. Get in here. This is fun. We got Doris saying, I did. It was awesome. I love Guinness.
Good on you, Doris.
I want to know if you've been to Ireland. Does the Guinness taste better, different? Let me know. Sandra Clary says, ooh, it's an experience, Ben. Experience. Okay. All right. I'm down. I want to experience it. I didn't get to go to Dublin. Johnny had to have all the fun. How was the Euro conference, Marco? What was your takeaway there?
It was fabulous. I mean, it's always fabulous to be in the same place as all the people that are involved in the relocation industry in Europe, and actually, worldwide. A lot of people from the US tend to come over, and Asia Pacific. So there's a real buzz for 3 or 4 days. It's a great opportunity to meet people face to face, to meet clients, to meet providers, to meet new people. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Euro and Irish whiskey. So it's a great
be here if it weren't for Euro and Irish whiskey. Where's Tad and Dom? They should put that on the marketing material next year.
And so it's a wonderful conference. It's really the only one in the year that is so specific to the relocation industry, and it's it's a real privilege to be part of it over 3 or 4 days.
Love it. Yeah. Missed it. Totally missed it. True or false? Oh, look at Richard's coming in here. Hi, from London. Richard says, Guinness stew, delicious. Richard, what's for dinner tonight? And are you foregoing dinner to watch the show? Richard's been on a LOVE+RELO diet for 3 years. He's lost a ton of weight. We just, basically every time his wife makes dinner, he tells her LOVE+RELO's on. 3 days a week, he doesn't eat dinner. Richard, okay. Thank you so much for your patronage. Pam saying Guinness is better in Ireland for sure. Okay. All right. Why? What's the difference, Pam? Like, I need more information. Is it the milkiness of the head there? Is it the creamy body? I mean, what is it? Does it just have a freshness? Does it taste like sugar plums? I mean, what's going on? I want to know. Richard saying, talking whiskey now, loving it. Patty, my fave. What does that mean? What did you say, Richard, just now? Patty, my fave. Is your favorite Irish whiskey, or is there a whiskey named Patty? Like, I need more information. Jana saying, I had Guinness because it was Dublin. Not a fan of it, so I guess it was a great experience for sure. More about opening connections over whiskey. Jana, is it the flavor? Is it the color? I feel like people are put off by the color. If we can just be honest, right? We eat with our eyes, isn't that what we say?
I think a little bit.
Yeah. What do you think, Marco?
I'm not a fan of Guinness, so I'm probably not the right person to ask, Ben. I've never
But
really...
why are you not a fan? Do you drink a Peroni? Do you drink other beers?
Yeah, so I prefer sort of cooler, slightly fizzier, lighter beer. I find Guinness quite heavy and creamy and not particularly, well, it's relatively flat.
I disagree. So Marco, but here's the thing: you just said fizzy and flat in the same sentence. Yeah. So I don't understand. I think we have misperceptions here, because Guinness is one of the lower calorie beers. For a full flavor beer, it's a very low calorie beer.
Is that right? Okay,
that's right. Can we get somebody? Can somebody check that?
I think so. I think we need some fact checking on the calorie count.
Marco doesn't believe me. Can somebody look up the calories in a Peroni, versus a Guinness. Or is it a Moretti? What do you drink there, Marco? Was it?
Yeah, Peroni, Moretti, Stella,
versus a Guinness. Estrella is a Spanish beer.
Yeah.
Versus a Guinness. Yeah. Put that in there. A 12 ounce or 16. Just make sure they're apples to apples. The other thing is the carbonation is much greater in those other beers.
It is. That's
so
right.
That means Guinness, you can kind of sock those away in here, you know, kind of get after it a little bit.
You can down it a lot faster if you're into that.
Yeah, Richard's saying, stop this chat. I need to go down to the pub now. He's watching Fiorentino versus West Ham.
Oh, West Ham. There you go.
Is West Ham good?
Well,
you could say whatever.
They're getting better and better, actually. But I think it's one of the first time in recent times that they've reached the final, the European final. So I think it's a big night for West Ham for sure.
Well, good for you, West Ham. West Ham was the villains in Ted Lasso, so we're very anti-West Ham over here in this.
Yes, it was. Yes, I remember that.
Jana says it feels heavier. Why does it feel heavier? Pints a pound the world around. Why does it feel heavier? It looks heavier. It's black, right? That's all right. Here we go. Adam, thank you, Adam. Adam's giving me a text here. Adam says, thank you, Adam, for our super producer here. Adam says, okay, here we go. Buckle up. Buckle up, okay, Marco?
Are you going to prove me wrong? You're going to prove me wrong and gloat live on screen.
100%. When you have a podcast, you can do the same thing, okay?
Absolutely.
And guess what? The guy that looked this up's on the payroll, okay? So you take it with a grain of salt. So Guinness, 12 ounces of Guinness is 125 calories.
Right.
12 ounces of Peroni is 149 calories.
Well, there you go. I stand corrected.
Yeah, like a sixth. It's got a sixth less calories than a Peroni. A sixth. Well, full six. It's like 18%. It's huge.
Still tastes rubbish.
It still tastes rubbish. All right. Pam says the freshness. It's creamy and delicious.
Okay.
West Ham, not great domestically, but got to a final. My team, Manchester City, is in the big Euro final Saturday.
That's true. That is on Saturday.
How many finals do y'all have? Y'all have so many finals.
Far too many.
Y'all have more trophies than a second-grade soccer team.
There are far too many. Really.
Yeah, sheesh. Let me ask you here. I feel like people. This is what happens. We stop talking about relocation, and then people get engaged.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got an opinion about that. So we can keep talking about beer and bad football if you want, or we can get back to the relocation talk here. No,
let's do that.
Marco's like, let's do that as he sips on a Moretti, a full flavored Moretti right now. Let me ask you right now, if for expats moving to London, assignees, whatever word you want to call them, what's the biggest challenge that they're facing right now in London specifically?
Mm.
Is it housing? Is it immigration issues, transportation, school? What's the biggest challenge?
So school, I mean, there are several, and again, it depends on the makeup of your family, how many people are moving. But certainly, if children are involved, schooling is always a challenge in London. There is just a lack of places for across the board for some of the better schools. I would say that
You
the
have to go to a
challenge is-
private school. Are you in a private school if you're an expat coming over, or is there public
No.
schools that?
No, not at all. You can go to a state school, a non fee paying school.
Okay.
But then you essentially face the challenge that all people face when they apply for state school, which is you need to have a permanent address before you receive confirmation of a place, and you can't apply to that school until you have a permanent address. And so oftentimes, really the location of the school drives the location of the house when we have family coming into London. And so there's a real sort of chicken and egg situation that tends to happen in that scenario. And so we're there to sort of guide and help wherever we can to suggest stopgap solutions, perhaps a private school for a couple of terms whilst they're able to apply to a state school and so on and so forth. But there are various strategies.
Let me ask you this. What makes it a permanent residence? Like, how do they know it's permanent? I mean, are people out there just using the Previero residence? I mean, what are we doing out here? If you put on your service apartment, are they gonna know better? Like, how do they know?
So you can. So that is a possibility to use your service department address as a permanent address. I don't know that that's a valid strategy for school places, but it certainly can be for opening a bank account, for example. I think for school places, I think you need to demonstrate residence in the form of a tenancy agreement, so an assured short-term tenancy or a common law agreement. So you really need to have proof of address in the context of a residence, a house in the UK. And so you can't apply until you have that. And of course, that essentially increases some of the anxiety that comes with a moving process. So that's one challenge for sure. The other challenge really has come from the world as we have seen it over the last 3 years post-COVID. We've had a huge surge of moves into London over the last couple of years, and that over time really has decreased the level of stock, the supply of rental properties generally in the UK. And it's taking time for that stock level to actually go back up to a level where people begin to have more of a choice. So certainly the sustained high level of demand when the floodgates finally open post the lifting of COVID restrictions is something that has provided for a challenging marketplace for prospective tenants coming into London. So they yeah, sorry.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, speaking of housing, I mean, are you recommending that they go into kind of more of the outlying areas? I mean, what's the strategy there?
So the strategy is making them understand and setting the right expectation at the beginning that there's going to be less of a choice, encouraging them to flex those criteria and perhaps look more broadly on location, on budget, on having a garden, not having a garden, and so on and so forth. So you want to try and widen the net so as to capture more properties to show them. And it comes down to having less of a choice because ultimately they only need to find one property at the end.
What's the biggest expectation that you have to reset? Is it the garden or something else?
It depends where they come from. So if they
come from the States, say they come from the States, right?
So if they come from like, Phoenix or LA, for example, the biggest expectation that we need to reset is the square footage. They come from 5,000 square feet for a 4-bedroom to 1,200 square feet for a 4-bedroom. That is a tough ask. And so often the process is a journey. Relocation we often say that relocation is a journey. We're walking them through really over a period of time, readjusting the expectation that they have on what it's like to live in London. But many embrace that. Many want to be Londoners when they're in London. They want to live like Londoners. They want to live in houses. that are typical to the area. So it also depends on your attitude when you move.
Do people ever buy when they go out there? Are they allowed to buy? Do they buy?
Mm-hmm.
How often does that happen?
So yes, people can buy, absolutely. We can also assist with that, and we have a couple of services depending on the needs of that particular relocatee, if I can call them that. We often discourage people to buy when they haven't lived in London or the UK before, because buying is obviously a much more permanent transaction. It's a transaction that has significantly greater costs attributable to it, and it's less reversible if you make a mistake. Whereas renting, you're alleviating the pressure of making a mistake when you rent, because it's not permanent. Because after 6 months, if you have a break to the tenancy, you can move elsewhere, and it allows you to become acquainted with different neighborhoods in London. So you're allowed to do anything you like, but we typically would discourage people from buying in the first place if they haven't lived here before.
Love it. This is great. We got a question here, Richard Majewski. Get those questions coming. We got a couple more minutes for questions from Marco. Richard's saying, are there particular areas which tend to be popular with the relocatees, as we say in the business?
So let's take London as an example. Yes, it depends on the seniority of those particular employees, but we do have pockets of residential areas that tend to be more popular in London, and others, typically the southwest and the west of London. So the Chelsea, the Kensington, the Notting Hills, the Chiswick, the Batterseas, the Richmonds, the Kews. Towards the west of London, we typically see most international assignees moving towards, and also that's where a few of the schools tend to be located. But increasingly, the northeast and east of London, and Canary Wharf as an example, is beginning to take more prominence, and certainly there is greater choice there of certain types of properties. So that's the wonderful thing about London. It's just a vast aggregation of really small villages that can be very different from each other, and so there is a great degree of choice to be had depending on your tastes and your preferences, and how much you want to commute, and how close you want to be to a big park, and whether you want to take the tube or the bus. So London provides a huge degree of variety in that sense as well.
Richard wants to know, let us know he's eating. I'm ealing. I'm ealing.
Ealing is great.
You don't have to say that. I mean, so what do you really think about Ealing? You think it's all right? I like to pick these international incidents here on the show here. Sorry, Richard. Just kidding. What is probably one of the things that's the biggest surprise for expats coming over to London? We talked about kind of some of the expectation resets, but is there something kind of maybe more culturally or anything like that there's kind of maybe creates a culture shock moment, or like, oh really, like that's that way here?
Yeah, I don't know that there is. I mean, obviously there are things that are slightly different from where they might be accustomed to live, but don't forget that these people are really international assignees. So more often than not, they would have come to London on a business trip. They would be acquainted with the culture. Sure. They would understand. They would have moved before in their lives. It might not be the first time that they come into the city themselves. So we are dealing with sophisticated people that are used to traveling. Of course, we do come across those people that really move for the first time, that don't quite understand the need to put salt in a dishwasher, perhaps, or
hold on. Why do you put salt in a dishwasher?
To soften the water. We have very hard water in London. So there is a sort of a hidden container in a dishwasher where you pour salt in, huge quantities of salt, to soften the water when you operate the dishwasher. So those sort of slight cultural differences we often go through when we meet with them for the first time, in their chosen property. The weather, of course. I was talking to Adam earlier on and suggesting that I think today, for the first time, I think we may well have gone above 12 degrees centigrade, it being the 7th of June. And it's taken a long time to feel warm this year. So yeah, it depends. But a lot of the people that we move tend to be sophisticated movers.
12 degrees for those of you in the US is 53.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Thank you for that little math problem, Marco.
That's all right.
Let's get into it. You want to play a little game? Want to have some fun, Marco?
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, let's do it. We're gonna play a little game. It's called Overrated, Underrated. Okay, this is the game that makes you choose. Okay, a lot of times I'll let people come on here. They just throw out some, kind of real in the middle kind of opinions on stuff. Nope, we're drawing a line. We're making you choose. There's 2 rules. Okay, Marco.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a topic and you have to choose overrated or underrated. Those are your only choices. Okay.
Can I qualify?
No. I'm hold on. This is the rules part. This is important. This is an important part of the program. Okay.
I'm sorry.
The second rule is I get to tell you if you're right or wrong. All right.
Okay.
What questions do you have about the 2 rules, Marco?
Can I qualify? Can I qualify my overrated or underrated answer?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
No, this is designed to be as controversial as possible.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I know how the Brits don't like to be controversial, but it's designed for that and to express purpose. All right, we're going to start with number 1 here. Tech at the local level. Tech, overrated or underrated?
I'm going to be controversial and say overrated.
Overrated. Mm-hmm. Okay. Defend yourself.
Well, you're giving me the opportunity to qualify. It goes back. It goes back to the earlier question. I think it's a wonderful tool to streamline the process, to make better choices, but I don't think it can substitute someone actually physically walking the space where they're going to live for the next 3 years of their lives. So I think it can complement the service in an incredible way. I don't think it can entirely substitute it.
I want to hear what people think in the comments here. Let's vote. Let's vote here. What do we think? I like your point, Marco. Yeah. I mean, I do. I mean, you're putting 3 years riding on not having seen it in person, right. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I need to get in that loo and take a seat and see if I can close the door or not. Okay. These are things that I would never have known from pictures. I've stayed in London several times. Okay. And all the pictures look phenomenal. And then you sit down in that loo and you realize, hold up, this is a round and not an oval.
Exactly. And that's why, Ben, we often tell people not to look at the pictures, but we tell people to look at the floor plan. Street map is a wonderful tool to begin to get a sense of the neighborhood, but nothing can substitute walking up and down that street, going into the local cafes, seeing what it feels like to have lunch there on a Saturday afternoon. You can't do that with goggles.
I like to actually tell them to close their eyes and walk through, and I lead them by their hand and I ask them to just, and get that first impression, that way. And then after a few minutes, then I ask them to open their eyes and affirm their decision.
Never take one of our clients on tour, Ben.
You're right. I'm just a podcast host. I don't know what I'm talking about. Drew says, I agree with Marco. Okay, fine. Sounds good. We agree. It is overrated. Okay, next. In-house resources to deliver services. Is the in-house resources overrated or underrated?
I'm going to be clear on that, and I'm going to say it is underrated. I think we need more destination service providers that are willing to invest in in-house resources to deliver services in this industry. I think it makes for a better service provision, a more consistent one that can deliver quality on an ongoing basis and consistency of service delivery.
Listen, you give me in-house or out-house, I'm taking in-house every time. So, I tend to agree with you on that one. But the flip side of that, though, it's a slippery slope, because then you have RMCs who start to say, well, I'll just manage my own DS program, or I'll start to just become so vertically integrated that I kind of gobble up all these kind of service lines and do it myself.
Yeah, and it happens, Ben, and it has happened in the past, but RMC need to focus on their own core competencies, which is ultimately to be able to select the best providers, irrespective of the location they happen to be. So, they need to invest in different kind of core competencies. They need to invest in system integration, IT technology, supply chain management, to select and train and exit those providers. We at local level need to engage in local expertise, in people that can deliver the service, in in-house provision. So they're different types of businesses, and oftentimes I think trying to build an in-house DSP as a relocation management company becomes a distraction to the overall strategic direction they need to take in order to be successful.
It is a compelling argument. Jana says under. Jana, you are correct. All right. Let's see here. Number 3. we have elected officials over here, but every once in a while it's nice to play king, Number 3 here. Work titles in an industry saturated by small players is a very specific topic.
That's my own private bugbear, and overrated. I don't think I've worked in an industry at local level that has more chief executive officers and chairmen than the relocation industry. That's why we are, as owners of Earth Relocation, we are just directors.
If you sit to work, you are a chairman. Just know that.
That's true.
Okay? You are a chairman. I don't know. I mean, I think, but it's also the nature of small business. I mean, it's there's a lot. I
think you need to embrace the smallness. I think we need to be proud of the fact that we're small businesses, and we shouldn't pretend to be otherwise.
But you are a CEO. If you're even if you're a business of one, you're a CEO, aren't you? You're not the least executive officer. You're,
Well, first of all, I'm a co-director, so I don't make decision in isolation. I have a wonderful business partner called Anna Barker, and we do run Earth Relocation really as a collective in that sense.
I didn't mean you. I meant like the royal you. Like, I mean,
of course,
if one is
of course, sort of in the nature of the role, you are that. But I think my perception of CEOs is perhaps slightly different. I remember when I first started.
No offense taken.
Yeah, none. When I first started out, or when I first started Earth Relocation, I remember meeting with a chap, and it was just him and another lady, and no one else. And they had second jobs, so they were doing it on the side. And he was the chairman of the business, and she was the chief executive officer of the business. And
he sits and she stands.
Yeah, so it's always made me laugh. So yes, so I'm going to stick with overrated. I think we need to be comfortable with who we are as businesses, and not pretend to be otherwise.
Okay, I won't take offense to any of that.
Okay.
Drew Phillips says overrated. Work titles are overrated.
I'm with you, Drew.
Sandra says, I'm a non-title person, but I find that some client groups and cultures look to titles to assess expertise and level of care. Sandra, let's just say for a minute, let's go the other direction. Say there's no titles. There are no titles. And we just know that Susie calls the shots, and Sam does this, and George makes the widgets. And, wouldn't it be a little confusing to everybody?
It's a fair point.
Shauna says Sandra agreed. It's all good until somebody starts taking your title away. It's like
you seem to be in the minority, Ben.
You know what? For once, Drew says Sandra Claire fair. It does identify decision makers as well. Yeah, Drew, as a salesperson, you want to know who's the global mobility manager, who's the purchasing manager, who's the CEO. Yeah, interesting. These are fun. Now we're getting somewhere here. I feel it. All right, so titles, underrated or overrated? You say they're overrated. Well, what am I going to say? Underrated? I'm going to say titles are underrated. I mean, you don't leave me much room here on this one. You really went out on a limb there with that one. Really pandering to the to the audience here. Okay, fine. You know what? I'll take the flip side of that argument. I'll take it. I'll take it at plus 500. Titles are underrated. I said it. I need more of them. Everybody needs 3 titles. All right. And let's see here. Last one here. Oh, we got a couple more here. Working at the office. Underrated or overrated? This is where you're going to lose the entire audience. You had them at, we don't need titles. Everybody's the same.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Let's put it to the audience. So I think underrated. I think we've gone too far the other way. I've just seen a position advertised just now on LinkedIn, which was entirely, so it was a move management position, entirely remote. And so I'm a trustee of a small charity in the UK, and we have one chief operating officer.
Trustee. He's a trustee. Maybe we just call you Marco at the charity.
Oh, so legally in a charity, when you're a member of the board of the trust itself, you are legally the trustee. So that's, I wasn't using that.
I'll allow it.
Throwing tiny little charity. So she's the chief operating officer, and she's operating entirely remotely. And we were having a meeting earlier on today. So she's relatively new in the job, and she feels lonely, isolated. She feels it difficult to connect to other people. It's really difficult when you work remotely to integrate within the context of a working team, to really integrate within the culture of the business, to understand the services, to be inducted, to be trained in the right way. I think there's a lot of aspects that haven't perhaps been thought through carefully enough with regards to remote working. I don't know that it's one or the other. I think more needs to be done for us to fully understand how we can deliver services better whilst allowing or improving the flexibility that we have as employers. I think there's a lot of work there still to be done. I think we're still learning on how to do it well. And certainly we're seeing some reversal of trends of late, with some of the bigger companies requiring people to come back 3 or 4 days a week. We've always operated flexibly, so we've always been office-based 3 days a week, and flexible working Mondays and Fridays, depending on business activities and business priorities.
Yeah, Meta just rolled out. I saw Meta, Facebook just said that they're coming back in hybrid, I think 3 days a week. Drew Phillips is properly rated. Drew, you know that's against the rules, Drew. You know we have rules here, Drew. We have rules for a reason, okay? But no, properly rated is probably an interesting call there. Jana says underrated, and I'm a happy remote worker, but magic happens in the office operation.
It does.
It's undeniable. It's one of those things in a vacuum where it's easy to say, I think, oh, it's overrated. Oh, why do I have to go in? Oh, but then when you're in, you kind of feel so. No, on the flip side, it could be true too. You could be in and it could just be miserable, right? Yeah. Your boss could talk too much, and you can't get any privacy or make phone calls, bothering you all the time, and you just want to get your work done. So I mean, that can happen too. But I think generally, I think it's underrated. But it'll probably go back to being at a point in a few years where it might be overrated again, right? It's probably where it was in 2019. It was probably slightly overrated, right? So it's kind of interesting how these things achieve that kind of balance. All right, last one.
Oh, that one is okay.
Yeah, RFPs, globally led RFPs to select local provision services. Globally led RFPs. Ugh. Overrated or underrated?
So overrated, but I'm going to circle back to what you were saying, Ben. So I think it would be so the point that you were making earlier on, really about using local providers to better sell your services as a relocation management company. I think more needs to be done in that space for sure. It's a real frustration for local providers like us when the selection of providers is, let's say, led by someone sitting in the US that has never been to London, who is selecting providers for moves to the UK and makes the selection based on an Excel submission. It's frustrating because it's very difficult, and we need to get better at it, undoubtedly. But it's very difficult to to demonstrate value when submitting a written response, without in parallel being able to develop and nurture relationships with both the supply chain management team, but also the team that is going to use the services at a local level. And I completely get that there are restrictions on both sides on that front, but I'm hopeful for a world where we can become better integrated at how those decisions are made as an industry.
Well, and let's be honest, right? It's hard sometimes to market yourself to decision makers that sit in, the United States, let's say, and they're making global decisions, right? How do you even become part of the consideration set? Does it mean my producer Adam saying love and relo? Yeah, legit, right?
Absolutely.
How do you personalize yourself and stand apart, right? So
it's a good question. It's a challenging one, and I think it probably requires another hour of conversation. Then
I feel like if you want another hour, I feel like I should increase my fee structure based on the newfound value proposition of this show. This has been great. I am sympathetic as a person who's won these RFPs before and enjoyed the privilege of sitting here in the States where a lot of these decisions are made, whether it be for RMCs or for some corporations that are based here. And I've lost some. They were awarded out of France or awarded out of the UK or Asia. But I think we tend to have a bit of privilege sitting over here. This has been great. This has been a lot of fun, Marco. You've opened my eyes to some things. I think I'm ready to try out maybe a London assignment in the coming years. So
maybe we can share a Moretti when you're here.
A Moretti. I'll have a Guinness, actually. I'll pass.
Well, Ben, it's been a lot of fun on my side, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me this evening. It's been this evening on my side. It's been great. It's been
been wonderful.
Great fun. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who tuned in today. We appreciate you. Tune in tomorrow. We will have Dick Burke from Envoy Global on.